This program is brought to you by the following proud sponsors: Paulson Manufacturing, saving the eyes and lives of workers and first responders by manufacturing the highest quality and most reliable safety protective gear in the world. And by the All-Tech Media Group, the region's leading multimedia video production and marketing company, creating powerful and innovative marketing strategies that deliver exponential returns.
On the last edition of Manufacturers Corner, our first Educators Roundtable focused on how colleges are working together with manufacturers to provide necessary training and skills development for current employees. Now, we also talked about new programs available to entry-level students seeking manufacturing careers in a few specific industries as well. But what about the jobs of tomorrow? You know, with a growing demand for American-made products and a shortage of qualified workers now, how can companies expect to fill what could be a glut of manufacturing jobs in the future? Let's talk about it with our guest experts, Joe Mignone and John Epps, on today's studio cast of Manufacturers Corner. Welcome back for another edition of Manufacturers Corner, the premier online news forum from manufacturers for manufacturers at manufacturerscorner.com. I'm Jeff Allen. Today we're talking about collaboration, the kind of collaboration that some economists believe is vital to long-term sustainable economic growth in this country. And it very well may be vital toward accelerating the sustainability of that economic growth. My guests today are two business partners with the same firm, Joseph Mignone, we'll call him Joe, and John Epps, both with the Global Institute of Business Acumen, a global business advising company. Joe Mignone has 35 plus years of hands-on experience with several Fortune 100 companies, provides them with an in-depth knowledge base to consult and conduct executive workshops to various sizes and types of organizations in many areas of business. In addition to consulting, Joe teaches at the University of California in San Diego and Riverside and the University of Redlands, and is the chairperson of the Riverside County Manufacturers and Exporters Association Southwest Cluster. John Epps is also an instructor at University of California Riverside Extension, providing a wide range of technical and organizational development classes for businesses, nonprofits, and educational organizations. He has over 37 years of skills development experience and extensive project management and business process troubleshooting expertise as well. Gentlemen, it's good to have you. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting us.
This is a really important topic we want to get into today, and I guess you could probably look at it as maybe the second part of a two-part series. We started last week, we had the College Educators Roundtable, and so we talked a little bit about that at the top of the program to introduce, and we're going to talk about collaboration today between manufacturers and schools, but maybe getting it at an earlier level to kind of influence those individuals that are key to a student's future. But first of all, what I'd like to do is to kind of open things up. John, if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about the Global Institute of Business Acumen, what it is and what you and Joe do.
At the Global Institute for Business Acumen, we began a project to work with executives, leaders, managers, and supervisors to improve the operation of businesses. One of the things that we see is a lot of waste. And we wanted to be able to help them identify and remove waste and increase value for their businesses. And so it's been our opportunity as trainers over the years to develop courses that people could take, as well as project managers and consultants, to actually help them look at the processes that they use in their businesses to run those businesses better.
Very, very good. So this is all about kind of helping the businesses to run more efficiently, a little bit leaner, but at the same time still within allowing them the ability to grow,
yes,
but to grow more effectively, and to save costs. So let's get into this discussion today. And Joe, I'll kind of start with you. we've seen recent reports lately, and a couple of weeks ago there was a story in the LA Times, and they talked about manufacturing jobs as really the key to long-term sustainable economic growth.
Yes.
There's plenty of service jobs out there, retail, and we've become a nation of consumers. We've heard all of this over the last several years, especially with the growth in the Asian countries, the BRIC nations, China, Brazil, India, with the manufacturing that's going on there. But look, lo and behold, here we are, brand new, innovative economy here in the United States, and a lot of the underpinnings really of a new economic growth seem to be that manufacturing base. We didn't see it before. Now, lo and behold, here all of a sudden is presenting itself. The problem is now that the educators, the people before these kids move on from school to their working life, don't seem to understand or know about this groundswell of manufacturing growth in this country, about these new jobs that are out there and coming, and more coming each day and each week and each year. So Joe, let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, do you think that it's true that manufacturing jobs and the need to get the word out about these jobs are critical to the long-term economic growth of the country?
Jeff, it definitely is. The way I see it is, educators today, nothing against educators, they do a great job, but a lot of them, they graduate college and they go right into the educational field, and they don't have the work experience. So if you don't have any work experience in that, it's pretty difficult to you to communicate to students what the work life is out there in the manufacturing sector. They don't know. They may have seen a picture of a manufacturing organization. You know, sometimes you go to a periodical magazine, and all of a sudden you'll see a dungy, dirty, filthy place the way it was back in the 20s or 30s. That's not manufacturing today. Manufacturing today offers so much to young people, from the field of, yes, hands-on itself, but there's so many other areas of manufacturing. It goes to purchasing, it goes to design, innovation of products. You know, we have STEM. Everybody, all we hear is STEM, STEM, STEM all over. And there is a design area that's associated with manufacturing, because you have people who design the product. But then, you know, it takes innovation and creativity to manufacture that product. Is it manufactured? What's the ability to manufacture that? So there's more than one way, and there's more than one area than just putting sheet metal together. Manufacturers today are so diverse. They have the latest equipment out there. Now we get into CNC machines, 3D printing. They're making cars using 3D printers. And the idea of coming up with an idea of how to do something differently. So there's a lot of ideas out there. There's a lot of opportunities for young people. But it's hard. The counselors at schools, they're not familiar with that. Maybe they need to get out or invite manufacturers to come into their local schools and just to learn a little bit more, to help them explain to the young people of today that the opportunities are there. Manufacturing jobs pay very well. You know, it's a middle-class job. The middle class were all well, not all, but you know, there was a big percentage of the middle class worked in manufacturing years ago, and we lost that. And we lost the idea of even technical schools here. That idea is gone. You know, if you want to learn something, they depend on the manufacturer to teach the students how to weld and things like that.
It's probably, you could probably talk about middle class within a larger framework, and probably is a subject for another show all into itself, really, when you get right down to it. Because, I mean, to define middle class today, it may be different from the way middle class was seen last year. We've heard all about it shrinking and so forth. So I think, first of all, there seems to be a mindset involved here that maybe it's not good enough to be middle class, when in fact, today's middle class, I mean, if you have a good paying job that pays not just surviving wages, but thriving wages, and you can own that car and you can have that pension and you can be doing something with your hands,
And taking a
creating
vacation.
something, taking a vacation from time to time,
Right.
maybe going someplace on an airplane rather than
Right.
driving across
Sure.
town for it. But I mean, John, wouldn't you agree that there seems to be something lost there in the understanding that, as Joe had mentioned, the educators have, but to young people, they have no clue.
Well, I think one of the big challenges has been the emphasis over the last 2 decades on going to college. And I have nothing against going to college, but
You
I
teach at colleges,
Yeah,
both
right,
of you.
yeah,
Right.
but I have worked with young people who are either on the verge of leaving high school, or in some cases who have already left high school without a diploma, who have come and said, my problem is that's not the path I want to take. So in a culture where the emphasis is on you have to have a 4-year degree to be successful, jobs in manufacturing have not been emphasized. And so we have a lot of young people who don't really know what's available, number one, who don't have an appreciation for the fact that that environment is a growth environment. I think a lot of people assume if I go to work in the manufacturing, it's going to be like the old Detroit, assembly line. We're all going to just stand there and do the same thing every day. They have no idea of how challenging, exciting, and fun actually working in a manufacturing environment is. One of the things I get the opportunity to do is to go and work, to do a lot of training on site at manufacturers here in Southern California. And I have to tell you, these are some of the brightest, some of the most innovative and challenged persons, some of the people who have a great time. They love their jobs. They don't just work hard because they get paid well, and they do get paid well, but they also work hard because they really love what they do. But if we don't communicate that to them in early grades, and I'm not just talking about, high school, I'm talking about even in middle school, we need to go back to a model in the schools that's diverse, that's not just academic. It's not just a focus on how can I get a better test score to go to college, but it's how can I use the talents and gifts that I have, the interests that I have. So, I grew up with the old Lincoln Logs. I used to build stuff.
Sure, we all did.
And my dad used to install storm doors and windows. So I grew up in kind of a manufacturing entrepreneurial family. So I was used to this idea of business and what it would take. And we just don't see enough of that in the community. And more importantly, we don't see enough of that in the schools. So that's where I think schools have the opportunity. And again, I agree with Joe. I think schools are trying to do a great job with our kids. I don't think that's the problem. I think sometimes it's just, let's be a little more broad, a little more diverse. And I think he spoke well to the problem. But if you don't have experience, one of the great things in my career when I started was that before I could get into training and development of people, I had to get some hands-on experience. And I'd almost like to see us invite some of our educators and some of our parents even into manufacturing environment today so that they could get a better feel for it. I work with the Workforce Investment Board in San Bernardino County as a youth council member. And so I get an opportunity to look at how do we get our youth into the job force, because the bottom line is it's aging out. I mean, our skills shortage today is about to get a whole lot worse because we're going to have a lot of the boomers, people my age, who are going to be, leaving that workforce. And there's going to be a huge vacuum if we don't get that pipeline filled with young people starting today.
And I want to get into that and chew on that in a little bit more detail here in a minute. But Joe, I want to go back to something that we were kind of talking about a second ago, and maybe asking you to be a bit redundant here, but I think it's interesting. The first of the stories that I heard or read, rather, in the papers about the new manufacturing jobs of today going unfilled, or there were more of them coming, was probably about 10 years ago.
Right.
We're still reading the same things. So why is it that things have not changed in 10 years' time? Is it just that the number of jobs are growing so quickly and unreported, we're not hearing about them? Or is it that simply there is simply not enough being done, perhaps on the part of companies, to come back around and create this awareness that, first of all, people need to have about these jobs? Because I would hate to think that the newspapers, the news media, would be the place to find out about these job openings when actually it should be coming from the manufacturers themselves, right?
Yeah, so with that said, there would be a perfect opportunity. There's a big sporting event coming up in February that everybody knows what it is. That maybe, the National Association of Manufacturers, a national association, could take some time out there and advertise a little bit, because they have such a huge audience, to let them know, hey, this is what manufacturers are today. Because people don't know. People don't know what they don't know until somebody takes the opportunity to start placing the seed and to grow the seed. So you have people watching television. What's the media that people associate with? It's not the newspaper. We know that. The newspapers. But how do we get the word out to them? Yes, we could invite it, and it has to be a partnership. This is where we talked about that word collaboration. It needs to be a collaborative effort between the manufacturers and the schools. I've done some work with some schools, and we talk about, well, you need to change the curricula a little bit. Well, it's going to take us 2 years to change the curricula. But, manufacturing can't wait 2 years. Yeah. The industry and the innovation and the technology changes too fast, especially in today's world with technology. Just look at the cell phone, look at the video camera, and the steps that has gone through with technology. People have a device today. It's not a cell phone anymore. It does a million things. Right. But just think and look at what a cell phone looked like when they first came out. So technology is fast, and the manufacturers are developing that. But who is going to make that? Who's going to come up with the ideas? It's the people. I often say, a company is just a group of walls put together. It's the people in the company. The people are the company. The people with the ideas, the innovation, the creativity, to bring that spirit out. And we just have to let the people know, that this needs to be done. So we need to collaborate. We need to, and again, as what John was saying, we need to go back. I remember when I was growing up, we did have trade schools. If you wanted to be a machinist, you went to a machine trade school. If you wanted to work in the aerospace, you went to an aerospace school. So you had all kinds of opportunities. But now that has changed a little bit.
Yeah, and so you wonder, okay, back when we were in school, back in our days, when we went to high school, we had shop class. We had metal shop.
Exactly.
We had wood shop. We were able to build things with our hands. They may have been a candle holder, an ashtray to start with, but it was something. And then we got, and then we made more and more, and we learned how to use drill presses, so budget cuts, whatever excuse you want to give for eliminating those types of programs, and we know that those are real excuses, are real reasons. How do we get those types of programs back in our schools?
I don't think it's so much budget cuts. I think the money is there. It's how they're spending the money.
I see.
I think the focus is, what are schools being measured on? And what the businesses do. Their measurement may be how many people we graduate.
Well, test scores and graduation rates.
Right, exactly. But what about, are we placing the young people for the future? As John said, what are we doing about the one who drops out? What are we doing to help them stay in, give them a trade, let them learn to do something? So we need to take on that responsibility to do that.
And one of the things I'd like to add, there is an awareness, a sea change is taking place. A lot of money right now is being redirected to the community college level. I think that's a place where we can bring back vocational education in our communities. I think young people who may have either struggled academically or who have dropped out of school are finding their way back into community college as a way to begin to learn some of these schools. But it really comes down to allocation of resources, what Joe was saying. You have high schools that have all but completely removed shop from the premise. There's not even a place to go and have shop anymore.
That's right.
And because of that, students never get that exposure. I remember, again, as a young person, as you said, building the little box that I would take home. It was rough and ugly, but it was something that showed I could do something with my hands. Today, I mean, it's all electronic, it's video games, it's a lot of that. And I'm not knocking any of the skills that come with that, because a lot of those skills are required in today's manufacturing environment. It is about operating control devices. It is about robotics. It is about those things. But if we don't even include that kind of training at the high school level, I had a young man who came to us a few years ago on our internship program. He wanted to basically, he said to me, Mr. Epps, I don't want to go to college. My uncle was a mechanic. I'm really good with cars. He's kind of the car whisperer. I tell you, if you have car problem, he's the kid. He just looks at your car, he tells you what's wrong with it. And I said, then what you should do is open up a garage. But if you want to open a garage, you have to learn some business. So you have to learn how these new cars work. They all are automated in computer. So he took some classes at Chaffey College. He started to learn robotics. And he said, Mr. Epps, I love this. And so that's what we have to do. We have to let people fall back in love with what they do. But I think it comes back to what you asked, Joe, also. Business can help. Because a lot of us, we just see these buildings and we go by them. We see a sign on the outside, but we have absolutely no idea what's going on the inside. And unless business exposes itself, unless it shows people, I was in a facility a few weeks ago. It is microscopically clean. They actually manufacture juice products there. It was ice cold. It's refrigerated, the whole building. I mean, I felt like I should have brought a coat. And kids don't have any idea that that's an environment you can work in. Again, it's that other image of it's like a warehouse type image, or it's a grimy place where you work. There's no dirt on these guys. I mean, as a matter of fact, everywhere you go, you have to wash your hands
Clean
3
rooms.
times. You got boots on because you can't let your shoes be there. But if that's all behind, you can't see that, then how can anybody decide this is what I would like to do?
Right.
And so businesses have to be more forthcoming. And even our television, I look at TV shows today, and everybody works in the office on TV. And I'm like, what happened to the guy that goes to work in a factory and you see what happens there and they interact and do things? We just don't have any role models. I mean, so when you take away all that imagery, we have very visual young people today. When you take away all of that, you set yourself up for, well, nobody knows what goes on here, so nobody is actually even trying to get into the field. So I think there's some things that businesses can do. There's some things that we can do within the culture in general, things like more TV shows that show these kind of jobs and what people do. And not so much just after he comes home from work with his kids, but at work with his friends and how you build relationships. And I think that would help to get more young people stimulated for these kinds of opportunities. And that's really going to be the key.
And Joe, I know that you've got some ideas too, some solid ideas, and you've
Right.
been out in the community where with manufacturers, you've seen some of the hands-on things they're doing to involve some of these kids out there.
Right.
Let me ask you though, I saw a story that was kind of alarming to me, and I just want to point it out. We want to kind of keep things positive, but at the same time, this is very, very real. This is just came out in the November issue of Assembly Magazine, mentioned a survey by Accenture and the Manufacturing Institute of America that showed 75 to 80% of manufacturers are reporting shortage of skilled and highly skilled workers. That shortage is driving up costs, thanks to increased overtime and downtime. I mean, how alarming is that to you? You both are partners in a business that works to help companies cut costs, streamline, and run their businesses in a lean, effective manner. So, I mean, obviously that right there speaks to the need for
Right.
fixing this, right?
Right, but the need, has to begin somewhere. So what a lot of companies doing, instead of bringing on people, they'll work a second shift, a third shift, because they got all the equipment already in place. So to bring on new employees, in a way, it's expensive. So they want to use the employees that they have, and let them work overtime, because it's less expensive to pay them overtime than to hire new people. But then if the people get the skills, they're more apt to get a job.
Perfect. A good and that's a good launching point too for where we kind of pick up from here.
They
Let's
gotta
talk
get
about the good
skills.
stuff. Let's talk about the skills then, Joe. Tell me about some of the ones that are in the highest demand right now.
Well, I mean, if you go to San Diego, there's shipbuilding companies out there looking for welders. Welding is a very good skill. They're looking for electricians. They're looking for electrical workers, to do wiring on these military ships or the commercial ships. But they're having a hard time to get it. There are more than, when you mention the word manufacturing, people think building. I don't know what they think. But there's purchasing associated with that. There is planning. There's project management. There's the aerospace industry. There are industries who take, there's a service company that will take the various pieces of equipment, hydraulics off an airplane, and resurface them. And it's very clean industry. You're not getting full of oil and grease and coal, and we're not digging in the mines like people think of. So, but then again, how do we let the people know? How do we let the young adults know that these are jobs out there? If we're not talking about it in school, I mean, there's not even probably a bulletin board up anywhere that says, hey, here's some jobs that are available out there. And if you're interested, contact so-and-so. But we don't do that in school, because we're driven in the school by a different culture.
Well, then what do we do, Joe
Well,
and John? I mean, because it sounds to me like really, okay, the companies are putting the jobs out there, and the idea is, make the jobs available and they will come. It's just like that movie Field of Dreams, build it and they will come.
Right.
And it's not exactly happening that way.
No.
So then isn't it then incumbent on the part of the manufacturers themselves to take a more proactive approach in doing this?
So let me give you two examples. As you stated earlier in the introduction, I head up the Riverside County Manufacturers and Exporters Association. I've been in manufacturing, per se, since I was about 11 years old. In my grandfather's shop, we used to build trucks and everything else. And I enjoy because you could see something at the end of the day. You see what you have. So I'm always interested in helping people. So I outreached to one of the junior colleges in the area, and I hooked up with an instructor, and he is very interested in ensuring that his students in his class will have jobs. After they take these classes, they'll have a job to go to. So what I've done is I was the network. I was the chain link that brought some manufacturers together because of heading up the manufacturing group, and having a conversation with the instructor and the school to say, okay, you teach, this is what we need. And then the manufacturers are saying, if you do this, we will do this. In other words, if you teach them these tools, we will hire them. And we have this program going now, and they're out there looking at getting instructors who are able to do that. So that's one example. So we're taking a proactive stance in the Riverside County Manufacturers and Exporters Association. I call it the Southwest Cluster because it's Murrieta, Temecula, in that area. Another one is the city of Murrieta. We, last year, we came up with the idea, the manufacturers came up with the idea, and we partnered with the city and the school, Unified School District in Murrieta. And we ran an event, and we're going to probably do the same event again this year in April. We called it the K-12 Tech Expo. And we had the children in grammar school, K through 8, and then the 8 to 12, the 9 to 12. And we brought in manufacturers. Now, we brought in not only manufacturers, but we also brought in people who do hospitality, people who do photography, people who do all types of trades other than STEM, okay? And we had them set up an exhibit. So students could see, hey, here's an opportunity. You know, if I don't want to go and get a degree, hey, maybe I'm interested in videography or photography or hospitality or medical field. And this is where these fields could take me. So we're trying to educate the students or give them an opportunity from the kindergarten all the way up to see, hey, you know, this is the path. So if I want to do this, you know, I'm thinking as a child now, if I want to do this, well, these are some of the classes I need to take in high school. And then when I'm in high school, this is maybe what I need to take in junior college or some other kind of college. And this is my opportunity. And I'll get a job because I have the skills at the manufacturer. So I call it, we got to listen to the voice of the customer. The schools need to listen to the voice of the customer. We talk about that when we talk about Six Sigma and things like that. The customer is the manufacturer or a company, because they're the ones that are going to hire that student. If they don't have the right skills that they need, they're not going to hire them.
Then what about the voice of the parents? What about the voice of the educators? Because you still have this pervasive idea out there. Not that it's a bad thing that, you know, that young people, that students should go on to a 4-year degree, John, and that they should, this is a career track, and we've been programmed to believe that we should be saving up all of our money to save,
Right.
to put our children in college and in the best 4-year schools. And get them into white-collar jobs, service-oriented jobs. As a physician, you're an attorney,
Sure.
you're working as a legislator, or maybe. So, I mean, how do we change the mindsets of parents and educators so that they understand? Hey, look, we're not trying to go around the school systems. We're not trying to get around giving kids an education. We want that.
We want to work together.
But
with them.
we want to be able to give everybody greater opportunities to succeed and a chance to allow their country's economy once again to be back where it needs to be, because it's sustainable and it's building from within right here at home with jobs that are here,
Right.
and not overseas.
When I talk with parents, one of the concerns that they have a lot of times is they don't feel that educators are listening to them.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's kind of a one-way exchange. The schools are telling parents, this is what your children have to do. There's not a dialogue that's really taking place, number one. So I think one of the things, again, that can improve this is if parents and counselors and teachers work with the manufacturers and the trade associations and the unions to begin to promote this kind of pathway to the future. I think a lot of parents recognize that their children are not going to go to college. And I think there's some frustration in that. I also think that people today are starting to notice that, you know, you might come out of college, but that 4-year degree doesn't even guarantee you a job.
That's right too.
And so there's a frustration that's growing. Why do we keep going? You know, what is the old saying? If it's not working, why do we keep doing it? Mm-hmm. And so I think parents would welcome an opportunity to have a more diverse opportunity for their children. However, I think the other side is, again, the trade associations and the unions are starting to ramp up a little bit in this area. But if you don't include the parents, if you don't include the educators, then what's going to happen is you're still going to have them, it's going to be like two ships passing in the night. So we have a need, which is these highly skilled jobs are looking for people. And we know that that need is going to grow. I think that's the other thing. I look a lot of, I take a lot of my students online to ONET Online, which is used to be the old directory of occupational titles. Mm-hmm. And I show my students the number of jobs that have a bright outlook in the future. And I think we need to do that in school. Instead of just directing them all toward those service and professional jobs that we're talking about. I remember when I was in school, one of the things I had to do was go in the library, open up this giant book, and pick jobs. And I learned about these occupations. Well, now it's all online. And they even have bright little things next to them that say, this is a bright opportunity in the future. We expect job growth of 10, 15, 20%. Here's what the income level is. Here's what the skills are. So it's not for lack of information, but I think it's for a lack of engaging people with the information, getting people to actually go and look and see that these opportunities are there. But once I start showing my students this resource, and they start to see all the jobs that have a bright outlook, you can see the lights come on in their eyes. You can see them start to say, well, you know what? That sounds interesting to me. That looks good. Oh, I can be in solar construction, and that's going to be okay. Or I'm going to be in an environmentally friendly. One of the other nice things is it points out the green jobs, so to speak, that we talk about a lot. But in the end, it's this issue of information is no good if people aren't actually connecting to it. So I think the resources are there, but activities to get the parents involved. I think maybe having more of the parent-teacher meetings and career days be after 5 o'clock when people are home from manufacturing jobs would be a lot better than having them during the day when only professionals can get out to those types of engagements. And that way we can say, bring your parent to the meeting so that everybody gets exposed to this information. I was sitting next to one of the union representatives for this area, and she was saying, it's not for lack of there being programs that they can enroll in apprenticeships and those kinds of things. But, and I think I just was hearing yesterday that, there are projects, infrastructure development projects for which there are not enough people right now. And so they know the project is probably going to come online in 3 or 4 years. So they're starting to train people today to be welders, to be craftsmen. And I think that's the other word that we don't hear a lot today. We think of manufacturing as kind of this crude thing, and we've gotten away from the idea that these are craftsmen. These people are artists in what they do. They're very good. I've watched construction workers put together things and just been awed by the skill they show and the speed they show in getting it done. But if we're not promoting that, we're not really making that connection so that parents can see that, hey, this is something, my kid can do this, then I think we're never going to, again, get the pressure from them on the education system to make this happen.
I'd just like to add to that. Kids today, they like to sit and play with their joysticks and computers. What do you think how exciting it would be to sit on top of a Caterpillar D11 with a joystick and build a road?
Yeah.
What we talk about excitement?
Real world.
The real world.
Yeah.
That's manufacturing.
Yeah.
It's building a road. And there's equipment operators, but do they know about it? Do they look at it? They don't even think about it. You take that blade and you put it on top of an egg and you don't even crack the egg. You talk about skill sets.
Precise
and precision. There's so many opportunities out there. And that just hooks into what John was saying. This country is looking to build the infrastructure. Where are we going to get all the mechanics? Where are we going to get the heavy equipment operators from if everybody goes to college?
Right.
Whatever.
Right.
It gets back to the other thing, the difference between us and Europe. At an early age, you take a test somewhere along those lines, and a decision is made. Do I want to go down and pursue a trade? If I want to be a paper manufacturer or whatever that may be, or do I want to go to college and be an accountant? But they have the same type of programs. Just because you're going to be a tradesperson, you need to go and learn about that trade. You go work internship at the job and everything else. At the end, you're a professional in that area. We don't have that. I don't know if we don't think it's necessary or what. But just to touch back to what John said also of connecting, we do have what we call Manufacturing Day they started a couple of years ago in America. And that's usually maybe a day during the first week in October. And a lot of manufacturers open up their facility and have tours. So to bring people in, so young people could see what their facility is all about. I mean, there are the connections out there, but is the school telling the kids that this is there? Are they encouraging them? Are they mentioning it all? I don't know. I can't say yes or no.
Those educators that you gentlemen do talk to, and you do try to kind of involve in the process a little bit as far as collaboration is concerned, and kind of educating the educators, so to speak. What's the response by and large?
I find it to be very positive because it's giving them another avenue to help that other person be successful.
I agree,
Yeah.
and I agree. I think as I talk to educators, as they come online, a lot of, again, what Joe said earlier about if you go straight from high school to college, college to the classroom, you don't really, you never knew that was there. You never got that exposure. So when you let them know, and if you bring them out to the facility and show them, I've had very positive responses. I've worked with guidance counselors who embrace us, opening up diverse opportunities for young people. And I think that's one other piece of this, I just want to touch on real quickly, and that is that the workforce has become very diverse. And one of the problems is the schools have not. So we have to find a way to ensure that it feels like it's open opportunity for everyone, and not, see, I think sometimes we self-select out of those kind of jobs if you're in certain ethnic or socioeconomic groups, because you've been told, well, that's going to hold you back. And I think, again, that's a problem. I think we have to change that thinking. African American, you probably can't tell, but I've watched a lot of African Americans who feel like, well, I shouldn't do that kind of work. I shouldn't do manual labor. I have to do, but the reality is that's the backbone of this country. I mean, diverse people help build this country in the beginning, and there are who are going to help it to be successful in the future. And so to the degree to which we don't self-select out of certain things, because, we've heard, well, that's not really the kind of job we want our people to do. So there's some cultural things that have to be addressed, and then they're very real.
But to another thing too, on a very simple level, is there's it's a matter of nomenclature too, because you think of jobs, the word job is associated with manufacturing sector, factory, smokestacks, getting dirty and filthy and punching a clock, and at the end of the day you go home, you wake up the next day, you do it all over again. But I think, wouldn't you agree that we've got to change that way that we look at it, not just as jobs, but as, careers.
Yes.
Right? I mean, these are open-ended careers, because it's not just the idea isn't just simply to claim your pension at the end of the day, but the sky is really the limit with these opportunities, right?
Yeah, you can go wherever you want. I mean, you work for a big multinational company, and you could find yourself, you could start out locally, and before you know it, you could be a plant manager in Timbuktu. Have opportunities.
And I think that terminology, I think you hit on a big piece, which is, is it about just having a job, or is it about having a career? And I think you're exactly right. When we think about professions, we use that, we almost say that word with reverence, we're a professional. And we don't recognize that people who work in manufacturing are also professionals, right. That they are very good at what they do, and that it takes just as much skill and intelligence and commitment to do their jobs, to operate that earth-moving machine that Joe was talking about, as it does to operate a computer system. And so we have to change. I think you touched it very real. When we're talking to our kids, We have to not just make them feel like, well, this is something you do on your way to something better, but this is something that has an end in and of itself. It's not just a means to an end. This can be a satisfying, rewarding, and financially beneficial career for you.
And dignified career too.
Very dignified.
Yeah, again, the proof is in, again, reestablishing that idea that middle class isn't a bad place to be.
You know what's interesting too is you work for big companies, and so maybe you're a machine designer or something like that. And what they'll do is put you in the manufacturing sector first, so you could see what this is all about. So now when you go upstairs and work in the office, wherever you want to call that, with your CAD degree or whatever, you have to take those skills and you have to take a look about, it's great to design it, but how are we going to build it? It's a team effort. Design, the person who designs and learns all this stuff, but you have another group of people have to build it. If we can't build it sensibly, we're never going to make any money on it, and it's going to be fail. So you need to know how that all works. So just because you go into the STEMs, that doesn't mean you don't need to know manufacturing.
Wouldn't it be fascinating too to find out if there was a way that we could find out how many designs have been on the drawing board and waited years before they were finally produced and taken offshore and produced someplace else because for whatever reason we didn't have the people who were able to take and build those, whatever they are here, whatever we're talking about.
I'll give you a perfect example. When the front wheel car first came out, everything used to be rear wheel drive. And the teams at the automotive manufacturers got together to design and make that car. Well, I don't know if they ever brought the service people in, the mechanics who are going to repair those cars into the process.
Yeah.
So now you bring your car in to get a tune-up, and now you have 4 spark plugs in the back. And the only way they can get those 4 spark plugs is to drop the engine out. Yeah. So a tune-up, instead of costing whatever, now we have to spend time dropping the engine out. So then they decided, we better bring the service people in, the people who go out there and fix it, the people who build it, so we get all the insights of how we design this piece of equipment so we could build to design. Otherwise, we don't do it. So they're finding out that manufacturing plays a big role. And then you just alluded to another situation. The situation is, recently we heard in the newspaper, we are no longer the #1 economy. We are no longer the #1 economy.
Well, we kind of saw that coming too.
Right.
Right.
So what are we going to do? Wait until we're #3?
Yeah. By that
Before
time,
we
of
do
course,
something?
it could be too late.
Right.
at that
And
point.
what's happening is jobs, we hear a lot about reshoring. Jobs are coming back here because people want quality products. They believe highly in American goods because of the quality, the innovation, and everything else. So where are we going to get the skilled workforce to build those products? Because people like the word made in America because they could trust it. We heard so much situations about products made in China and everything that the credibility has gone down. And now it's less expensive because we have lower price energy. We've got better processes to build materials. So manufacturing, right? It's also about processes. So you have to understand the whole thing. So there's when you use that word manufacturing, God, it's a whole world in itself. It's just not putting nuts and bolts, digging holes, putting spades, whatever they may have a concept of what manufacturing is. It's not the same as it used to be.
And if I can just add, and the byproduct of that revitalization in manufacturing is that all of those other professional services we're talking about now have customers that can afford their products and their services. So one of the things that I think, again, we have to recognize is at the core of the economy is still the ability to produce products, not just provide services. That we're never going to be sustainable if all we have is professional services. That the professional services exist to really serve the people who are making the production.
And really,
And
right.
that's really what I think has to come back.
The
to.
old saying, you know, a
That's
rising
backbone.
tide raises all boats. I mean, so everybody benefits from a
Right.
stronger economy and a stronger
course.
manufacturing economy at the end of the day. We have just a couple of minutes left, so I want to kind of go around the table. In the end, for this program, Joe, what would you like people to kind of take away from the show today?
I think we as a group of manufacturers and the group of educators need to take an approach to sit down and talk to one another and to see how we could collaborate. And it's all about the young people. It's all about the student. It's not about the manufacturer. We want to, everybody wins, but we want to ensure that, number one, we provide an opportunity for everybody to make a decent living, all right? Manufacturing, I think, does that. Nothing against service industries, but I think manufacturing, skillful manufacturers provide that service. So we need to sit down and we got to work together. Something like I told you, working with one of the colleges and also working with the local school. Encourage, we as a parent need to encourage our children to let them know there's other opportunities out there. You know, sit down and get a book and help them look at it. I have a 7-year-old granddaughter, and she's told me, says, Grandpa, you know what I want for Christmas? I want to spend more time in your workshop to learn. Yes, I believe someday she may be an engineer, but she wants to learn how to build, how to put things together. She has an erector set, you know. It brings out the creativity and the innovation, and you get people to think, which is important. So if we could collaborate better, we could be so much better off as a society. Help to ensure those who drop out of school, if you want to call it that, maybe we'll encourage people not to drop out. Maybe we'll solve another problem in solving this problem.
John, anything to add to that?
I would just say that it is important to recognize the balance that's going to be required between expertise and soft skills. That as we move manufacturing forward, we don't just want to have workers, but we do want to create a polished individual who has the interpersonal skills and communication skills and other skills that will allow them to actually compete better in the workplace and on the global stage.
And flourish when they get there.
Absolutely.
Well, Joe Mignone, John Epps, I want to thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure having you. A very insightful discussion today. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's going to wrap up this edition of Manufacturers Corner. Thanks again to our guests, Joe Mignone and John Epps of the Global Institute of Business Acumen. Now, if you are a manufacturer, policymaker, or educator, and you would like to take part in our discussions as a guest or member of a future roundtable discussion, please complete our contact form on the contact page at manufacturerscorner.com. You can also call us at 951-687-3098. We like to talk on the phone still these days, and we'd love to hear from you. If you'd like to be a sponsor of Manufacturers Corner, we'd be happy to talk with you about that as well. Once again, just visit the contact page at manufacturerscorner.com or call 951-687-3098. And when you get in touch with us, we're going to add you to our email list and get back to you with all the information you need. For Manufacturers Corner, I'm Jeff Allen. We'll see you next time.
This program was brought to you by the following proud sponsors: Paulson Manufacturing, saving the eyes and lives of workers and first responders by manufacturing the highest quality and most reliable safety protective gear in the world. And by the Alltech Media Group, the region's leading multimedia video production and marketing company, creating powerful and innovative marketing strategies that deliver exponential returns.